With the controversy surrounding a picture of the head of the so-called Tibetan government in exile paying respects to a Tibetan flag, I'll be asking what is at the heart of India's Tibet policy. And in Japan, many are predicting that Tokyo's governor may one day be the country's first female prime minister. With Abe's approval ratings hitting their lowest in 2 years, how are female politicians likely to change Japan's political scene? Welcome to The Point. Live from Beijing, I'm Li Xin. To start things off, after confirmation that the leader of the Islamic State, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was killed in a Russian airstrike on May the 28th, the question everyone is now asking is how much of an impact this will have on IS's activities. In 2011, many predicted the end of al-Qaeda when Osama bin Laden was killed by US Navy SEALs, but the group remains a potent presence in many countries. IS has already expanded beyond its strongholds in the Arab world to Afghanistan and the Philippines. Based on experience, Baghdadi's death seems unlikely to impact on the stable succession of a new caliphate. Al-Qaeda in Iraq survived after former leader Zarqawi was killed in 2006. He was replaced by Abu Umar al-Baghdadi, who was killed in April 2010. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was his replacement, demonstrating that this group has had an organizational history of ensuring smooth transitions of leadership. So it's unlikely the death of Baghdadi will spell the end of the IS. Instead, it will propel him into the pantheon of its martyrs. So any celebration of Baghdadi's death would be premature. IS followers are likely to claim that they had established an Islamic State despite the vast array of enemies against it. And if they did it once, they could do it again. Turning now to day 2 of a series of discussions on the South Asian subcontinent. And today our discussion surrounds a press photo which emerged over the weekend of a Tibetan independence flag unfurled on the Indian side of a lake in dispute between China and India. An image of the head of the so-called Tibetan government in exile paying respects to a Tibetan flag was released through Indian media on Sunday and said to be taken last Wednesday on the shores of Pangong Lake, along the disputed border of China and India. Now, the Tibetan flag is seen as a symbol of Tibetan independence, and while India has previously said to discourage such political activities by Tibetan separatists, this time the Indian government has not commented on it. On the same day the picture was released, a spokesperson of the so-called Tibetan government in exile clarified that he mistakenly mentioned the Tibetan flag was hoisted, though in fact the flag was already there. That clarification could allow the Indian government to de-link an event that the Chinese media has described as the use of the Tibet card from the ongoing border confrontation. Is India playing the Tibet card? And what is at the heart of India's Tibet policy? And most importantly, with Beijing, does New Delhi really have a Tibet card to play? Dawat Serin from the China Tibetology Research Center joins me here in the Beijing studio. So thank you very much for joining us today. Now, first of all, last Wednesday, some rituals were performed on the shores of the Lake Pangong along the disputed boundary between China and India. What were these rituals meant for?
As we know that so-called Tibetan government in exile, now that the organ was switched the name to the CTI, Central Tibetan Administration. This organ was used every chance to publicize their wrong view on Tibet, and usually they use the military strip to separate from China, and so when they was in overseas, especially in India, they used every stage to say China is using the wrong policy on Tibet, and also they used spiritual Buddhism and to take every chance to do their publicity. And now that this time there's India and China, there's a kind of this border dispute, and they want to take this time to they maximize their interests over there and use the foreign power to publicize their image and also to get the interest from this
Yeah.
world.
So I was talking about these rituals. So what were these rituals for?
The timing is very tricky, and the timing is the Dalai Lama's birthday at that time. And as we know that he is a very influential in terms of Buddhism, at that time there's many people will get around this area, and if there's many people get around, there will be media to have to get involved, and also there's many people get around, and then they will become a big topic, and then
To attract more attention.
To attract more attention, because there's many people,
Yeah.
and they're also, as you mentioned, they're doing some kind of function or like praying for long life for the Dalai Lama, and then in return for this one, they will, how to say, they will become this kind of topic will become hotter and be discussed by people all around the world. Media will involve.
Well, what about this clarification that I just mentioned, this seemingly contradictory statement from the spokesperson of the so-called Tibetan government in exile, first saying, yes, it was a Tibetan flag that was hoisted, but then later on saying the flag has always been there, he just passed it and he was paying respect to it.
I think this spokesperson has no confidence to say this is the arrangement. But actually, one that is there's the picture we can see from the newspaper that this is true, but after that he said this kind of coincidence or it means he has no confidence, because India has government was agreed that the Tibetan is part of China, and if he says this kind of arrangement, that is against India's policy. It's become a political mistake or political big things.
Also, there was Indian media have been saying that this kind of visits have been held in the past. The only difference was that there were no photo opportunity organized, so no photo ever came out. Why is it that this time there was this photo opportunity?
Yeah, from that point of view, we can see the Indian governments have kind of the double standard on Tibetan policy. One hand, they agree that Tibet is part of China and Tibet on China and it belongs to China-Tibet territories. And on the other hand, there's some official from the Indian government openly or secretly supporting the so-called CTA. One is they send some official to attend some functions and some kind of, then they will make speech and openly support the movement. Sometimes they will provide financial support and also to do the education sections. That's the one part. The other one, just from that point on, we can see the authority was want to use the Tibetan cards to maximize their interests, and then in future with the Chinese relation, and then when they're dealing with the Chinas, they have more bargaining chips on the table.
The timing is also very interesting because, as I mentioned, there is this border standoff between India and China on the section where there is this tri-junction of China, India and Bhutan. And this picture came out over the weekend almost exactly as the standoff is also very much in the news. Is there any coincidence here?
Yes, as I watched, there is a news we can see from the foreign spokesperson and also we can see from the news person from the Chinese embassy in India, and they say this incident is quite severe, and the face of the incident, and it is only the India troop was across the border, entering into China's territory, and this is the first time usually it's in other parts. Now this time is in entering to the Sikkim sections. We have never seen this before. So that is very, very severe incidents. And then go back to the CTAs, they want to use this instance to maximize their attract more attention.
Yeah. We were talking about the policy of the Indian government since the Prime Minister Modi took office in 2014. Have we seen a consistent Tibet policy emerging from this current government?
The scholar in the related field agree that it's very hard to say Modi government has kind of Tibetan policy, but we can see from some incidents, and from that incident we can see there's a Indian authority use what kind of related policy over the China on Tibetan. So they called issue the so-called Tibetan issue. One is that, as I mentioned, that he will agree to send the official to the functions, and also they will invite the political figures from the CTA to attend their occasion, and then also provide some.
What about the scholars?
Scholars and China and India agreed to they boost the cooperation between academic circles, and also we can see from newspaper that there's many delegations from both sides to go back held in New Delhi or held in Beijing from the think tank, and they talk how to arrange for the future, and I think this is the main trend. On the other hand, we can see from newspaper and also some works and essays from the scholars. They think that they want to use the Tibet as kind of buffer zone between India and China, and that will reduce their burdens. And they think they're keen to on the new Cold War mentalities, and they just want to use how to contain the other countries' development and use kind of the bargaining clips, and then to maximize their interests. So he suggests the authority that's used to playing the Tibetan card to suggest the authority to use that card and to reach their goal. That's the picture of the academic circle in India. So.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Dawa Tserin from the China Tibetology Research Center. And here is my point. Now, in yesterday's program, we talked about an ongoing border standoff between India and China at the tri-junction of India, China, Bhutan. Quoting China's attempt to change the status quo by constructing roads, Indian soldiers and bulldozers crossed into Chinese claimed territory near the Doklam region. Now, amid the heightened tensions, the flag hoisting photo undoubtedly aroused further suspicion on the part of Chinese press and academia of the intention of the Indian government. Now, the position of the Chinese side is actually quite clear. While many issues could be negotiated, national unity and territorial integrity are non-negotiable. Both the border standoff and the Tibet independence are core interest issues to China. So long as India keeps on trying to play a Tibet card, China can be expected to react strongly. And you cannot blame someone for reacting strongly if you keep poking them where it hurts the most. And you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break, but don't go away. I'll be back right after this.
CGTN shows you more, providing a fresh global voice you can trust.
And a different look at the world you won't find anywhere else.
We offer unparalleled coverage of Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
We present diverse perspectives on news and newsmakers from around the world.
We want to engage our viewers with stories that represent the complete picture.
We want to share with you ideas that matter to us all.
The stories, the people, the issues.
A new and balanced perspective.
CGTN. See the difference.
According to the Interparliamentary Union, or IPU, in a ranking of the percentage of female representation in the lower house of 193 countries, Japan ranks 164th, last in the group of 7 industrialized nations. Now, the country also lags well behind China, which ranks 73rd. At the same time, though, there is a growing number of people who believe that Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike, the first female governor in Japan, may one day become the first female prime minister. Koike was named one of the world's 100 most influential people of 2017 by Time magazine, along with the US President Donald Trump and the DPRK leader Kim Jong-un. So what will female politicians bring to Japanese politics? Will Koike become the first female prime minister in Japan? I'm pleased to be joined from Singapore by Naoko Kumada, a research fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University, and in Boston by Victor Thier, an assistant professor of Japanese studies at the University of Hong Kong. Welcome to both of you to the show. Ms. Kumada, let me come to you first. Now, Koike led the party Tomin First No Kai to win more than twice as many seats as the Liberal Democratic Party in the Tokyo Assembly elections earlier this month. What are the implications of the result, and what is the significance of her victory?
Yes, the past Tokyo Assembly polls has served as the bellwether for national polls. And in this case, although the next national, the lower house election is not until 2018 December, this is surely to affect the national state level politics, as it was such a historic defeat for the LDP. The results seem to represent a rejection from the voters of the established political parties and the usual politics as usual. And Yuriko Koike offered a clear alternative to the graft-ridden, self-dealing and old boy style LDP politics.
Professor Thiel, yes.
Abe's poll has dropped.
Yeah, let me come to you in just a moment.
Yes,
but Professor Thiel, let me come to you now. An NHK poll shows support for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's cabinet has dropped to 35%. It is the first time in about 2 years that the disapproval rating has exceeded the approval rating. Recently, Abe has been mired in allegations that he influenced the approval process to open a vet school headed by his friend Kotaro Kake. Do you think Abe's poor approval ratings and scandals offer a golden opportunity for Koike to challenge for the position of Prime Minister?
I have my reservations about that. Koike is true enough. It's one of the it's the kind of politicians that I think Japanese people like right now. And there is a theory that Japanese people actually like dominant leaders. So Koike looks very promising. After all, she has a track record. She was Abe's first, I think, appointed defense minister, although she resigned. She then, resigned from the LDP and created her own party to run against the LDP in the local elections, and she actually won by a big margin, so that's pretty impressive. But to say that she will be able to replace Abe, I think is still premature for a few reasons. First of all, I think in Japanese politics, you need to have the LDP machinery to win at the national level. Secondly, Prime Minister Abe, even though currently he is mild with political scandals, he is still pretty popular. I mean, 35%, it's actually still quite high in democracies. So there are a few factors here. First, I think Japanese people are kind of used to the scandals with politicians. So Abe is not actually the exception. Secondly, Abe has a pedigree, which he used very well. He comes from a political dynasty family. There are also enough conservatives in Japan who dislike China or who is very pro-United States and who agree with Abe's agenda, political agenda of normalization. So to that extent, I think a lot of people see Abe as the way to Japan's normalization. Now, the big question is whether Koike would be Koike will have a different agenda, and by the looks of it, Koike actually has really similar views with Abe in that respect. So this is I think the first point. The second point is
well,
that
well, Mr. Professor Tell,
there is a 2020
Professor
Olympics.
Tell, Koike, although
Yes.
you say she is a little bit similar to Abe, she did promise to create a healthy government, and she castigated those surrounding Abe for doing what they think the Prime Minister's office wants. What kind of political style does Koike have, and what changes has she brought to Japan's political system, you think?
Well, I think first and foremost, she's one of the first female politicians to make such an impact. I really don't recall anybody before that, and this is a new phenomenon. But having said that, Prime Minister Abe has also an agenda about promoting females in politics. So Prime Minister Abe has appointed the second defense minister, which is also a lady. So I think she's pretty straightforward. She is pretty charismatic, and she is able to galvanize all those people who actually do not like the LDP so much, but still not happy with the mainstream opposition. So to that extent, she is kind of like a breakaway from the LDP. She is actually quite similar, I think, to LDP politicians.
Yeah.
But to say that she would be able to replace Abe,
it's too early.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Ms.
Go
Kumada,
ahead.
Ms. Kumada, let me come to you. Do you believe that Koike has the ambition to run for Prime Minister? And if in the long term Shinzo Abe's days are numbered, and if Koike is on the political rise, what do we know about her attitude towards China? And could she change the overall relationship between China and Japan?
Yes, well, important question. At the national level, we've been talking about her as a governor, but at the national level, she is very much aligned with the LDP and the conservatives. She is a member of the ultra-conservative religious Shinto nationalist group, Nippon Kaigi, and she supports the revision of the Constitution, amendment of the pacifist Constitution. She's hawkish. She was the former defense minister under Abe, and she she supports the stronger role of the Japanese military, and as a member of sharing the ideology of Nippon Kaigi, it's a group that denies Japan's aggression in Asia.
Mm-hmm. Now, she also set up a political school and encouraged, and also encouraged other women to take on challenges in Japan's male-dominated society. Now, there is a low percentage of women in power in Japan. How much of an impact can she make in Japanese politics?
I think she can make a strong impact. She has started her own school, and that is the basis for her new party and her the local level party, Tomin First no Kai, and that party is expected to go national this year. The young politicians that she's raising, including female, has been very successful in the Tokyo Assembly elections. So if she can raise newer political candidates, then that could be a very new, refreshing new wave for Japanese politics at the national level.
Mm-hmm. Professor Tail, the defeat in Tokyo election led Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to reshuffle his cabinet and key party posts. Among them, the female defense minister Tomomi Inada could possibly be replaced. Now, she was criticized for her remarks at the recent Shangri-La dialogue when she jokingly said that one thing she had in common with her Australian and French counterparts is that they are all good looking. joking, which was perceived as sexist by some netizens, including many in Japan. Does this tell us anything about the way in which female politicians are perceived in Japan?
Well, I can't really speak to what she says, but it's a free press in Japan, like in most democratic countries. So the press could actually jump on any one of the politicians who says anything. I think this is not one of the largest gaffes that she's actually made. To a large extent, I think female politicians are still a new breed in Japan, and I agree that you know, the feminist angle in future elections will look increasingly important. But I think Prime Minister Abe would still try to do pretty well. After all, he has a track record of appointing lady politicians who share his worldview to cabinet positions. To that extent, I think the question of whether Koike would actually be able to replace Abe is moot, because I think there is a chance that Koike would actually prefer to stay on as the governor of Tokyo because of the 2020 Olympics. To that extent, because it's like a sure thing, if she stays on, then Abe might actually be able to get a third term if he succeeds in revising the party rules to let him run for a third term.
Yeah, we have to,
as the leader of the LDP and continue on from Prime Minister on henceforth.
Yeah,
so
we have to leave it
there
there.
is a chance that the dynamics won't change.
Thank you very much, our two guests, Victor Thiel, an associate professor at the University of Hong Kong, and Naoko Kumada from the Nanyang Technological University. And as usual, here is my last point. I do not agree with the right-wing views of the two female Japanese politicians we just talked about, but I am all for it that women should be more active in society. As for the joking comments Inada made about the looks of herself and two other female ministers from Australia and France, well, I think there is nothing wrong with it. We should be proud of the way we look and not shy about saying it out loud. And if we are joking about it, that's even better, because that shows that we have a sense of humor as well. So go for it, girls. Let them say what they want. That's all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.